In this episode, we talk with Race Across America and Race Across the West finisher and winner of the legendary Furnace Creek 508 race, Adam Bickett from the USA. After getting into cycling and riding many centuries and double centuries, Adam entered road racing and made it to the Cat 2 USA cycling division and also participated in the Collegiate National Road Championships. Later on, he switched back to the ultras and made his way to a victory with an 8-person team in RAAM, scored solo finishes at the world's toughest ultra races and added another victory in the Race Across the West 4-person team race. In the last years, Adam reduced his training, focused on other aspects in life, but he wants to come back to cycling soon. My name is Christoph Strasser. I'm your host of today's Ultra Cycling Show. Let's roll! Hey Ultra family, welcome to another episode of Roadside with Christoph, which is a special edition of the Ultra Cycling Show, where I talk with amazing athletes from all around the world, just like we are chatting from our saddles. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Adam Bickett, who is a finisher of Race Across America and Race Across the West. Hello Adam, how are you?
Hey,
Hi.
Good to see you, Christoph.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and it's been a long time ago until we've met in person before Race Across America and Race Across the West. And
Yeah.
I hope you're
Yeah,
well.
I think last time. Yeah, no, I'm doing well. You know, I'm not riding quite as much as you, I think, but I hope to change that. But yeah, I think last time we saw each other was in Borrego Springs before RAAM 15.
Yeah, that's true. Have you been riding today already a little bit, or?
I have not. It's still, around 8 a.m. So, I plan to, it's actually like summer weather here. It even reached like 90 degrees this past week, Fahrenheit. So that's pretty warm for January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we have a quite cold winter here in Austria. I do all my sessions on the indoor trainer at the moment, and I hope to go to outdoor riding in the next 2 weeks again.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Adam, we want to introduce you to our viewers. Maybe some viewers do not know you, so we have a very special introduction for you. We have prepared a sprint round of questions. I will tell you the first question, and please keep your answers quite short. And please introduce yourself to our viewers. Here is your first question.
Okay, I'm Adam Bickett. I'm a software engineer from San Diego. Who am I in a nutshell? I don't know. That's too hard for a short answer. I'll think about that one and answer it later.
But please just tell us your age and where you are living.
I am 37 and living in San Diego, California.
Perfect. Okay, so the second question is maybe a bit easier. When did you begin with riding your bike and ultra cycling?
First race would have been the Davis 24-hour. The first 500 that I treat as a real ultra would be a Furnace Creek 508, and that was in 2009. Okay,
great. Do you know how many bikes you own, and do you have a bike sponsor?
I don't have a bike sponsor. I've actually been clearing out bikes in my garage because I had too many, probably around 15. I just sold my RAAM TT bike and have been giving away some of the older ones that are not worth selling. So yeah, probably about 10.
But that's many more than I have.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Cool. So the next question, what about your training?
So right now it's probably like 4 or 5 hours. Ideally it's about 20 hours if I'm actually racing, and I do intend to race. So I need to get that back up towards probably 15, 20 hours.
And what was your training volume when you prepared for Race Across America?
It's tough to give an average because it was mostly long rides. It was mostly like weekend, 300-400 mile kind of adventure rides. And during the week, with a demanding job, I didn't train as well as consistently as I wanted to.
Okay, so let's move on. The next question. What do you like more, tough, high intensity or endurance rides?
So I like both. If I have to pick one, I would honestly say intensity. When I first got into racing, it was actually crit racing, which is shorter sprint-based races for both collegiate and the USA Cycling, USCF, in SoCal. And there was something so thrilling about a sprint win or setting up a sprint and going for that. And I enjoy intense efforts, going for KOMs and stuff like this on Strava. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the next one is about your motivation in training.
That's a good question. I think I need to find that motivation. It's why I'm only riding 5 hours a week, right? I think it all comes down to the goal. Like, is that goal compelling enough? Do you believe in it? Are you doing something to follow it? When I had RAAM in my sights, before that it was Furnace Creek 508. There are these rides take on this almost like mythical proportion. The reality of it is it's not quite like that. It's really just a really long race. But if you give it that importance, then you can find that motivation. And I've had a lot of other things going on in my life in the last 4 or 5 years. And so the motivation had been different. And the motivation is, it's so important to be like one of your top priorities, if not the top priority, when you're actually going to race. So it hasn't been like that, but it hasn't been bad. It's just something that if I'm going to race again and I want to, then, I have to set my sights on that goal.
Yeah. And I think it's a big difference talking about motivation, because it's the reason why you do it. It's the reason why you have a goal. And the other thing is just entertainment while riding. It's two different things. But we will talk about that later in detail. What about your greatest achievement?
I'll stick to sports and cycling. And I have to go with finishing RAAM 2015, and not just finishing it, but getting through the lung issues that I had in Colorado, making it back to the course from the hospital, which is something that was both rare and very difficult, and took a lot of work between the crew and I.
Yeah, that's definitely a great achievement. And I've been in RAAM 15 as well, and I've been struggling as well. And we'll talk about that later. But I think what's maybe even more important is not the great achievements, but the failures, the very painful ones.
Oh, that's a tough one. Sticking to cycling, because nothing comes to mind from general life. I think I deem it a failure whenever I'm not putting myself into staying healthy and riding. And I due to various reasons, I haven't been riding nearly as much in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's not really a failure. I shouldn't see it that way, but when you go from the top, that highest achievement, and then you're looking for that next thing, I kind of felt like I would have liked to have kind of stayed more consistent over the past years, but no single event, or thing. I don't think I see this thing, even when you don't succeed, I don't really see it as as failures.
Okay. And now let's talk about the good things of our sport again. What do you love most about ultra cycling?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I think two things, and it's kind of the opposite sides of the coin. One is the isolation and the time with yourself, and that's a lot on Randonneur events, or just going out on really long rides. or being out there in the middle of nowhere and just riding. The other is actually the camaraderie with the crew. So in the crewed events, it's so important, as everyone says, and you know, it's kind of cliche at this point, but it's very true that you surround yourself with your friends, and you surround yourself with people that both care about your goal and care for you, and everyone has a good time together if you put together the crew well. And also the community itself is I think the best group of people, like community that I'm involved in all aspects of my life. So I think those two things.
Yeah, it's very nice, very nice. That's true. And the last question of the introduction round is about your goals in the future.
That's a tough one. I mean, you know, I'll start small and then go to the bigger one. One is just getting back and doing a race, like any race. Starting to train seriously again, and then that will lead to the biggest future goal is a better finish at RAAM.
Okay, but you do not have a specific year or a specific time slot, so just try to get into riding again and then see what happens. Is that true?
Yeah, well, so racing this year, RAAM, you know, within the next few years, if I can make it work. I mean, there's just so many pieces that have to come together to make that happen. And I had intended to do that in 16, and then I kind of toyed with it again in 18. And, you know, I need to make a solid plan, but I think it's reasonable to say within a few years that's doable.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction round. I know there was a little pressure on you with the timer.
Those are tough ones.
But I hope it was fun for you. And
yeah, it makes you think quick. See, that's harder. The other one, you know, you didn't ask my FTP or things that you can either just blurt out.
Yeah, we can also talk about that. But I would like to ask you about your latest experience in riding, because a few days ago there was that virtual online racing, the World Championships.
Yes.
And
right.
Have you been part of it or not, or only a little bit, or how was it going?
Yeah, well, so I did do that race somewhat. It was really odd timing. It was 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. You know, it makes sense for a night start for a 24-hour. Now, I'd never raced a 12-hour, but starting at 9 p.m. is pretty difficult, especially when the European contingent is starting at like 6 a.m. But that aside, it was just kind of an initial, you know, taste of the waters. And I'd never done a 12-hour race. And so I set out riding as if I was actually doing it as a race, you know, not paying any attention to the fact that I don't have the fitness for the pace that I would ideally hold. And so it lasted about, you know, half an hour. I actually hit something on the keyboard and it crashed full gas. And then when I got back in, you know, it started me at the beginning again. So this is one of the things with with these software platforms. You know, it's nothing like real racing, and I think it's a good training tool. But I can't see it as I don't know. I know there's serious racing going on Zwift, for instance, but it doesn't really interest me that much. I mean, a lot of what I love is getting outside. I sit in front of computers all day for work, and you know, I really enjoy just the feel of the wind, being out there and going actual places. So that's just a long-winded way of saying that I managed about 4 hours. I ended up going to bed after a couple hours, and woke up and rode another 2, which for me is a very long time on the trainer. I know it's a little bit, you know, a standard, maybe even a shorter indoor trainer session for you. For me, that was hard, and my legs were definitely feeling it the next day. But you know, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, for me it's quite similar. So it's just not really interesting me that much. to do virtual racing. I also enjoy really my old school trainer. It's just a very simple one, without any Bluetooth connection, without any Wi-Fi,
Oh man,
without
yeah.
even electricity. So it is like you cannot kill it. It lasted for 10 years, and I once had a more modern
Wow.
trainer, and it was gone like after 2 years because I don't know,
Oh, you
riding
just
too
wore it
much,
out.
riding too hard or anything.
Nice,
So
nice. You broke it.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
I
I
like
mean, it's not. Yeah.
I like the simplicity of riding indoor sometimes, especially when it's too cold outside.
Yeah.
But I'm not into virtual racing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the benefit is you can just jump on it with so little logistics. You just go on it and do whatever you have time for. But yeah, it's difficult. I know a lot of people structure their training plans around it. The truth is, in San Diego, there's rarely a day where it's not nice to ride. It gets a little chilly in the mornings, but you can bundle up for that. It's not like it's snowing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
you are definitely very lucky in your place. That's true.
Yep.
When we've been riding together, let me
Mhm.
just show you some pictures of that, because I was looking for them on my external hard disk, to get them together. Um, we've been riding together in Borrego Springs. We have the pictures here, and I'm not sure. Can you remember that day in detail? Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
exactly know what happened. Uh,
I
we
actually, yeah, I think I remember your story also. I can tell. So, I mean, I think I pinged you because I knew that you were doing your prep work in Borrego Springs, and that's probably one of the reasons that I was doing that also, because this was before Race Across the West, which at the time was just a gigantic deal for me. And I have a particular uh, difficulty with heat. Um, and that's the best way to combat that as far as I'm concerned. And so I so this one had we arranged or not? Now I don't actually remember.
no, I can remember that on that day we've met. We have been talking and everything,
Yeah.
and then we went up the glass elevator, the
Yeah.
very long ascent, and I was like really going hard and at high intensity, and it was like the final high intensity workout before the start of the race. And on that picture, I was a little ahead of you, but then I completely
You
uh,
just cracked at some point,
yeah, it
right?
was too hot. It was really tough. And then I was slowing down, and you catched me again. And then like we did this picture, and then after that I was like
We
riding
went,
down again.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then in the evening, a few hours later, when it was cooling down a little bit, I was like riding up that hill again. So I had a good
Well,
session in the evening, but
I
during the
remember
day
reading
it
about,
was
I think you
crazy.
updated that. I think you updated that, but also you were like, you ended up coming down with like in the dark or something, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I went
No,
up
that
the hill
was,
again in the evening, and yeah, in that year I knew that you have been very successful in other races like the Furnace Creek, which for me
mhm.
is very famous and very special. I was reading a lot about it because it
That's
is.
cool. I wouldn't know if it's known in Europe.
I mean, it's not super famous, but for me, I like everything about ultracycling, and I'm very interested in different races. And the Furnace
Yeah.
Creek is so special because it's this going through Death Valley, and it's really, I think, one of the hottest races you can ever do. And I just knew that you have been winning that race a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I've
Just
also been,
once, but
yeah, but you did it on a fixed gear. Is it true?
yes, yeah. The first year I had all these difficulties. I was off the bike for 7 or 8 hours on the top of one of the first big climbs, Town Pass, which is the climb that goes into Death Valley. And even that was mile 200. I was just a wreck. I was puking. I wasn't able to take down food or water. And that was my kind of birth into ultra cycling. I eventually was able to like sip some water and recover. And that year was the windiest, or one of the windiest years. Even the winners, Chris Ragsdale, I believe, won that year. He was going like 5 or 6 miles an hour, and no one was on flats. That was so windy. The following year, I came back knowing that I wasn't yet ready to be truly competitive. I decided, why not make it interesting and do it on a fixed gear? So that was kind of what was behind that. It was actually a pretty difficult experience. I think it was 41, 42 hours. And it's actually the only time in ultra cycling that I've really kind of, I would say, lost my mind. In the sense that I was asking my crew who they are. I was like feeling like something was wrong. I kept asking them if I was on the right bike, because I knew there was some special rule. In this case, it was that I was on a fixed gear, and I was like, I'm on the wrong bike. Like, they're going to say the whole thing doesn't count. These kind of weird paranoid things, right? And it was really just from the sleep, I guess, because this was going into a second night. Funny enough, it never happened to me on RAAM.
But you're sure that it had nothing to do with the choice of a fixed gear bike? It was just happening in your mind because of sleep deprivation and everything, or was there a connection with doing it on a race bike or on a fixed gear?
I mean, the reason I lost it was likely because I was just severely dehydrated and lack of sleep. I was in bad shape. I think it was that year that I finished like 20 pounds lighter than the start, 18 pounds, something really, really serious.
That's crazy. That's not good to lose so much weight. But there is one more thing I'm really interested in. When I was watching the website of the Furnace Creek, like it was called a few years ago, in the meantime, the name has changed. I think now it's Silver State 508. Is it true?
Yeah, the race has moved. So I think this was in 2013. We had the government shutdown, and they had to reroute the race. They couldn't go through Death Valley. When it came back, they had a new superintendent that didn't allow any sporting events in the park. And since then, the Badwater ultra running race has come back, but there still isn't, an agreement worked out to be able to hold the race, or it would be extremely expensive. I'm really interested in getting it back on that course, because to me, there's something special about that route. But since the race has moved to Nevada, it starts in Reno and it goes east into Nevada. So it's desolate. And it's pretty in its own way. It's not the same race anymore.
But when I was watching the websites and looking for the results, because I was stalking you, I wanted to know Adam Bickett. He is so fast, and he will be a competitor in Race Across America in the future. So I wanted to know everything about you. But when I was watching the results of the race, I didn't understand who these people are, because there are just funny names there, like
the totems.
Yeah, like animals or like fantasy names.
Yeah.
Do you know what's the reason for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, and I don't know who started it. So Chris Kosman, who ran the Furnace Creek 508 for some time, he's since passed on the race to Rob Panzera. But I think he established that. I don't remember the story about where that came from. So I know Kosman himself was Gumby, and used Gumby in his Race Across America, like a big Gumby doll, when he did it, I think when he was very young, 18. And so it was just kind of, it's something that each rider chooses their own totem. And so you go by that totem instead of, your racer name. So Marco is Tweety Bird, for instance, and I'm Rock Rabbit, which is some mountainous rodent.
Okay, I was guessing that you are the Wild Beast, or is Wild Beast Racing something different you're using?
Yeah, Wildebeest is something else. Yeah, that was my Wildebeest Racing. That comes from my team RAAM experience with Team Viasat. My riding buddy Metal dubbed me wildebeest. I'm not quite sure why, because wildebeest are actually like herding animals that have very small legs. It was supposed to mean that I was filthy and large and beastly, something like that, because that was the kind of place I took on the team. But yeah, somehow it stuck. This is so.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I would like to talk a little bit about the Race Across America now, of course, because it was a very difficult one in 2015, but you had quite a good preparation because you have been on an 8-person team before, and especially with like a superb performance. You did a track record in the 8-person division
At the time, yes.
And I think it was helpful for you that you had been doing road racing in the years before.
Yeah. The higher intensity racing, you mean? Like crits and road races? Or do you mean on the same route?
No, especially because when you do it in an 8-person team, you are just for a few minutes or maybe half an hour or maybe 1 hour with very high intensity, and then you can rest, and you do it a few times per day. So it's like you as a road racer from years before, it's definitely the best thing you can ride short and ride very hard.
It was a very good bridge to the more traditional racing and the ultra racing, because I'd done both at that point. So I loved it. I had a blast. Yeah, it's basically just like individual time trials, and then you recover, but you don't ever fully recover, but you still are able to just like get as much food and fluids in as you can stomach, and then go out really hard, and then actually eventually sleep. That makes it so much fun because you can go so fast. So yeah, I love team racing, and that's another aspect of ultra cycling that I think is I wouldn't say overlooked, because I know a lot of events actually are viable for the directors because of all the people that can come in and do the team events. I mean, I think we don't, or at least for those of us interested in solo, it seems to take a different, it's seen as kind of a different thing entirely, but it's so much fun. I know you've done some team racing also, right? Is that the kind of experience you have?
Yeah, it was, for me, it was also very, very fun and very very tough also, because riding on that high intensity is really not so easy when you do not do it so often. But I did a 2-person team in Race Around Austria, and I did a 4-person team in Race Around Austria. The strange thing was, in the 2-person team, I've never seen the other guy I was riding with, because
that's the way the 2X works.
Yes, you're switching, and he's going into the follow vehicle, you're going onto the track, and there is no time to talk to each other. You're talking to your crew, but never to the other rider. That's quite funny. And in the 4-person team, it was a bit more relaxed. There was more time to sleep and more time to organize yourself.
Yeah, and then 8-person is so much different, I think, even than 4. I mean, 4 is still a little bit starts to get ultra, and the Austria race is like very long, right? I think it's pretty long, like 3,000 kilometers or something.
The Race Around Austria is quite half of Race Across America. It's like half time, half distance, but the same climbing. So it's really a lot of climbing in
and like all the Alps passes and stuff like this.
And much more.
I definitely would like to do it someday.
Climbing.
Yeah.
Because when you compare Rocky Mountain climbings and Alps climbings, it's a big difference. The Rockies are much higher, which can also lead to problems, as we both know, with the high altitude. But they are not steep. They are long, but not steep. And the Alps, they're really like tight curves in the downhills and in the uphills,
right?
Like grades of 10 to 15%. And it's really tough when you have to do it at the end of a race.
Oh yeah, you must be crawling. Yeah, and the one thing about RAAM is, despite, except for some of the sections at the end, the climbing is very tame, and it's really just about continuing to lay down power. The grades, and I think I guess maybe the European races are different. I'd like to hear about that, but yeah, the climbing overall, I thought, is kind of I think it's overemphasized by people talking about RAAM. There is a lot of climbing, especially early on, that's kind of tough, and especially with that new section out of Camp Verde in Arizona, that's kind of rough. But to me, I was surprised by how little it mattered directly.
Yeah,
I don't know, what's your thoughts?
I think it's the problem with the climbing in RAAM is I really think the high altitude and the difference in temperature, the difference in you have wet air, you have dry air, it's very hot, it's very cold, all the things, they really matter. But the climbing itself is not a big problem. Maybe just
those
the Appalachians at the end, they're really steep and they're really tough. They are very.
I felt so good at that point in my race that I just ate up those hills, which was fun. And I do remember, just going back to the team, we came across you in 2012 in Pennsylvania. I guess it would have been right after the Cumberland to Hancock stage. There's another climb that comes out there, and
really,
you look like you were just having a terrible time. Like, you looked like you were suffering so hard. Except so when I was up, I was so stoked. I'm like, oh my God, we passed Strasser, that I just went like extra hard, almost. But when I passed you, like the crew and
have you been the guy overtaking me?
Yes. I was the guy overtaking you.
That's
do you remember this at all?
Yes.
Do you remember?
I know exactly. I can remember exactly. I mean, not you as a person, but just the situation, because it was my spirit was really down, because I knew that
I could see
I cannot win that race anymore, because
Redo had it, right? Yeah.
Redo Schoch was about 2 hours in front, and it was just only a few miles to the finish left. So I knew that no chance to win anymore. And in that year, we had the start of the solos on Tuesday. And I think the start of the teams was on Friday.
Saturday, probably. It was a weekend, Saturday or Sunday.
Yep. Okay. And
we finished 5 days, 5. You probably finished 9 days something, right? So 4 days.
No, maybe it was different. The solo started on Wednesday a few years ago, and now it's on Tuesday. But I'm not sure, but there was a change there is 1 day more difference between solo and team start. So in the years after that, after 2012, no one catched me. So you have been the last.
Oh, because then you started doing 7 days and change too.
Yeah.
Then you started breaking 8 hours, and that's too hard. But yes.
In the years to come, I've always been in the finish before the teams reach the finish. So I can remember that like it was yesterday, and I was thinking, how can a human being be so fast in that just steep Appalachian uphills? And it was you. I didn't know it.
Yeah, well, what happened though is I was just completely burying myself to pass you, because I was just stoked. And this was our last day, I guess it would have been. So we were just pouring everything out. And that time you actually had something. Unlike in solo, you just give what you can. But then my follow driver was like, hey, you're going to need to go harder, or else Christoph is going to come back and we're going to need to get out from behind you. I'm like, oh, please, no, I have to like hold it. And I could see, because the climb it was a fairly long climb. I remember barely this thing that kind of like goes down a valley and then it goes up a kind of an extended climb. It's one of the longer sections of climb remaining. And I was like, just make it to the top of this thing, please. Like, so yeah, that was a memorable time. And I could tell that you were really suffering.
Yeah, I think your crew was just making fun of you, because it was just impossible that I come back, but it was maybe a joke to motivate you. After you did Race Across the West, and it was very successful, of course, then you moved on from a second place in Race Across West, and then you did Race Across America solo in 2015. And when we watched these pictures, I know that you had a good start and then you had massive problems. We can just see it here that you had suffered so much. And I think you and I had some kind of the same problem. It was high altitude. It was like lung problems and everything. So, but of course, the big difference was that you made it to the finish line finally. Obviously you had a great team and you can see the team spirit in that pictures and the support of your crew, which is great. And then you made it to the finish line while I did not make it to the finish line. But what was happening? What do you think? What was the reason for struggling?
Well, so actually that's one of the reasons why I've been hesitant to really go full into RAAM, even though in 16, I had planned it. I always had this doubt in the back of my mind is if I put all these things together, the finances, the sponsors, the crew, all this stuff, and then something like this happens again, I felt so out of my control because there's so many unknowns in RAAM. A large part of what made it like a feasible problem for me was to kind of break it down and say, okay, I understand how to do this. What are we going to do in this situation? What are we going to do in this situation? I didn't have anything in the playbook for this. So basically, I mean, it was so hot that year. I mean, I think it was one of the hottest years. Do you remember it as that? I mean, it was definitely hotter than normal.
Yes, it's true. I've been talking with other riders as well, and everybody says that 2015 was maybe the hottest year in the last decade of RAAM.
Yeah. And so, I had mentioned like heat is a particular challenge for me. I'm heavier than some riders. I sweat a lot. So when I'm heat adapted, I can sweat a lot, but that's upwards of 2 liters an hour, and that's a heck of a lot of fluids to intake. And I think that when you start taking in that much fluid, like you have other things that might get out of balance or out of whack. It was only in the last few years before doing RAAM that I had figured this out. I was actually involved in some studies at UCSD, some sports physiology studies that studied sweat rates and stuff like this. It was very useful for me to be able to know more about the dehydration. But so I was using that strategy. I was drinking a lot of fluids. I'd slowed down in Utah. I was actually feeling okay, but it stayed being hot. And then as I climbed out of Cortez, I just started feeling awful. In fact, I felt something weird in my lungs. I think that they had started filling a little with fluid. And so it was a combination of all of a sudden going from 90 to 100 degrees to, it wasn't even that cold, maybe 60s, low 60s, upper 50s, into the evening, cresting the hill before Durango. And I was swollen and I was losing my power. It's when things started getting real. It really kind of seemed, even though it was super hot, we were managing pretty much everything until that point. And it almost seemed like, this is just working out too well. And then that quickly came to an end. But basically we had a pulse oximeter because I was worried about my reactions to altitude, because I know that sometimes I have problems, sometimes I don't. I was reading very low on the oxygen saturation. After a couple hours in Durango, it was frustrating. I think I was 3rd or 4th place on the road at that point, and it felt like everything was great. And then just all of a sudden, I had no legs. Dave Haas passed me in that time after Durango when I started up again, and I was just not able to do anything, and it wasn't food because I tried to eat, but it was really just that my oxygen levels were so low.
And they had. Let me just say something. I knew that. I'm sure that you have been one of the strongest riders in the field that year, but that's not enough. I mean, Race Across America has so many things to manage, and everything must be perfect. And if you're not healthy, and if you have a problem in your body, you cannot perform at your level you would do otherwise.
And we're pushing to find those limits, and you do find those limits if they're there. If you have any of those weaknesses, it's likely that they're going to be exposed on a race as long as RAAM. So I mean, that's what we found. So we went to the hospital at that point, and basically said, your race is over. And I did not want to accept that. I thought maybe it was true, but I was like, well, let's talk it out, because despite being, not feeling great on the bike, I mean, I was okay. It wasn't like I was, mentally, I didn't feel too bad about it, except for the fact that I knew it was a big deal, and I was concerned for my health, as were my crew. But the doctor, the ER doctor there, happened to be a high altitude mountaineer himself, and so he, walked us through the options. The standard high altitude, and you probably have looked into this also, the standard medications to help deal with high altitude are actually not allowed under doping rules. Diamox and other things like this, but it's actually, I think it's for other reasons, for like I don't know if it's for masking or something, but in any case, it wasn't an option to take.
Yeah, it's not increasing your performance, but it's still not allowed. And during a race, a lot of medicines are not allowed just because of the rules.
Yeah. And so in any case, the standard treatment that the doctor wanted to give is not on the table for me. And so really the other thing you're supposed to do is drive to lower elevation. And it's hundreds of miles in any direction from Pagosa Springs to anywhere lower. It's a very long way. So we're like, okay, that's not an option. The only other option is to wait it out. And since my goal was just to finish, and I had gotten, I had enough spare time, and that was my one hope. As I was like, well, we can just wait and see. There's no sense in calling a DNF at this point, because we're all here. We'll just see what happens. And the doctor's like okayed 36 hours off the bike. And so that's what we did. And it was very weird to have this weird break in the middle. And so, we're just hanging out, eating, resting, in the hotel room. It was very strange knowing that the race is, basically the race is about 36 hours long at that point. So by the time I started on the following Sunday, the last racer had just passed, and I actually passed her back just a few miles after starting. So I had gone from the front to the back, but I was just happy to ride again, and so it was just really
what about the focus? Because I think when you have to stop for 1.5 days, is it possible to re-enter like a state of mind that you're in a race, or are you just like keep on riding and take it easy and let's finish this, or have you been still in that race focus afterwards?
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't starting out to win it. I was starting out with the mindset of, do everything right, stay within yourself, and get to the finish line. And so that all still held. That was all still the same case. The difference was now it's like stay even easier, because you don't know what your body's going to do. And we had an additional limit of needing to keep my blood oxygenation at a certain level. And so I would take, as I climbed up Wolf Creek, which was pretty close after, just a handful of miles after I started again. And I think this picture behind me is from right before Wolf Creek. In any case, I like this one.
Yes, I have this picture also here in the gallery. It's and
that's Wolf Creek to the left for sure.
Yeah, and I'm quite nerdy. I have done Race Across America 9 times, and I know all the places and all the pictures, which places they belong to.
You can know it almost immediately, right?
Yes, and this is definitely a little bit before Wolf Creek Pass, on the plateau of Pagosa Springs.
Yeah. So I can. Yeah, my mindset was pretty So you mentioned focus. I mean, that's exactly what it was. It's like I knew I had a razor edge to be able to get over those mountains because I didn't know I didn't know if I could, but that was the only thing I could focus on. And it was so hard to go slow enough to not, have serious difficulty because I could feel it. Like my head wasn't quite right. And I would get off every 10 or 15 minutes. We would take the pulse ox, check the measurement, allow myself to like regroup a little bit. So it was very slow going through those passes, but we got through it, and I slowly started to get better. So.
Yeah, it's for me, it's like a déjà vu because I was like going through the same in that race, but we did not stop. We continued racing, and my doctor and my crew and me, we have been hoping for that it will get better after leaving the Rocky Mountains, going down to Kansas.
Right.
But it didn't happen. It didn't really get better just for a few hours, but then it got worse again. And the problem for me was that I was really going for the win, for the victory. And I knew that this is not possible anymore. And what I also thought of was my future, because if I continue racing, if I continue to race it, maybe I can slow down or maybe take 1 or 2 days off like you did.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I have a choice. I can finish Race Across America, maybe, or maybe not. I'm not sure. But if I want to finish, I have to stop for 1 or 2 days. The other choice was quit the race, definitely stay healthy, and do the race around Austria 2 months later. And if I continue in RAAM, there is no option of doing race around Austria 2 months later, because then I'm done for the rest of the year. And so in my case, I was like, my priority was having maybe a good race at the end of the year, and of course staying healthy, because nobody can tell you for sure that there is maybe not a long-term problem for your lungs if you continue.
And I was still worried about that. And it was the different goal. And that's exactly what I imagined, is that you had a totally different goal than I did. And that gave me the luxury of being able to take that time.
And I also had that long time thinking, because I knew I could do RAAM next year and next year again, and I've already some victories in my pocket. So it's not necessary to do it in that year. If everything went wrong, I just quit the race for that reason.
Do you think that was there anything that you could have done, or have you thought about that, like earlier? Maybe gone way easier, like as you went into the Rockies, like how was your experience over those mountains? Because you were going to end just a few days later with like pneumonia or something, right? Like it was pretty severe at that point. Were you able to ride? Were you riding near your level normally, or were you already severely compromised by the Rockies?
In that year, everything went wrong with me, like with you, because it was so hot in the beginning. After the race, we did a lot of analysis, and we tried to find the error, and we tried to get the best learning out of it for the future. And we are quite sure that one of the reasons was the heat in the beginning. So I was drinking and drinking and drinking, but I was drinking too much. And that's the other thing. You can dehydrate or you can overhydrate. And both is a terrible thing for your body. And the problem with overhydration is I also drank just plain water with no salt or no electrolytes in it. And
your electrolyte balance was probably off.
Yes, my electrolyte balance was not okay anymore. And then there was water everywhere in my body. Like I was swelling, I was gaining weight. And at some point there will be water even in your lungs. And then you have the problem with lung edema, especially when you enter the mountains.
That's what I was developing.
Yes, and if you don't get rid of that, which is very difficult because of the high altitude, and you're not allowed to take the medicine, then a pneumonia can happen very fast, because water in your lungs is the best place for bacteria to grow. And that was my story, and the learning for the future was taking care of the electrolyte balance, and since that year, I am not allowed to drink as much as I want when I do RAAM on the first 1 or 2 days when it's very hot, when we ride through the desert. So there is like fluid restriction, only maximum 1 liter per hour. Better is 800 milliliters per hour and not more. And a lot of cooling from outside, so cold water, ice everywhere in your body where it's possible. And yeah, if the cooling from outside is not working, then you have to slow down. There is no other option, because riding fast and drinking more is leading to the worst that can happen.
Because I mean, the thing that made it harder for me, and I'm sure that I drank, whether I drank too much or whether it was the out of balance electrolytes, I was intaking that to address the issues that I'd had for 10 years in ultra cycling, was certainly being dehydrated and not drinking enough. So now I'm confronted with a scenario where it's likely that I drink too much, but every single other race where I had problems was almost always as a function of not drinking enough. So it's tricky, and it just goes to show how complex executing a race like this is. You run from one problem into another problem, right? And there's really, I mean, I don't know if there's any right answer then for a year like 2015. That was difficult.
And you and I, we have been like discussing that for a few times, and also some chatting about the pacing strategy in RAAM. Maybe it would be better to have a slower start and not start with that high intensity. I'm not, I mean, I have my idea which works for me, but I think there is no right or wrong. It's depending on what you want to achieve, on how good your body is trained, and how much intensity you can take in the training. But of course, I'm very competitive, and I really like the competition and going for the best possible result. And when you are in the lead, you have definitely a better state of mind and a better spirit than when you're just in a position, maybe fourth, fifth,
it's probably an individual thing, though.
Of course, depending on your goal.
But even if your goal is to win, like for me, it also makes you a little bit nervous. So if you're in the lead, then you only want to preserve that lead, and you'll be, if some guy's back there, then you'll be a little bit, it raises that anxiety level. At least it does for me. Whereas if you're like, okay, for instance, when you passed me, I think on the climb up to the shoulder Palomar before Lake Henshaw, and you must have been putting out, near 350 watts or something, because I was trying to cap at like 250 or something like this, right? And then you passed, and then Dave Haas, and then Alberto Blanco. I think, it looked like a road race to me, like, and I was like, these guys are crazy. To me, I was like, of course, I was having I had a different goal. But I think even if I wanted to do my fastest race, knowing that in the end, like 150 to 160 watts is like pretty reasonable for the end of RAAM. Like that is fast enough to get a very good time. I'm just thinking, maybe it doesn't make sense to go out too high of intensity. I know my body can't really deal with it that well. I'm good at the short, intense stuff, but then my body is spent, right? So if I'm going for more than like 5 hours, like I actually really need to dial it back. So I'd be interested in this. So, in 2015, maybe, like, imagine if you had gone out at 200 watts and just done that instead of much higher that I know you did for the first 48 hours or so, or I'm not sure when you started having problems. Do you think it could have been different?
I'm quite sure it could have been different, but especially in that year, because my health was a big problem. I think when I stay healthy, and when there is not a problem with the hydration and the temperature, like in the years before, like 2014, I did the same strategy and it was working out perfect. So it's difficult to say. I think when you train high intensity and you're like moving in your power zone, not too high, of course, but my thinking is you can go as fast as possible as long as you do not destroy yourself, and then in
Yeah,
the end um, you will not be more tired than when you start out very slow, because when you start out faster, you have that spirit, which that extra motivation.
right.
And
And just the physiological ability. I find that by
yes,
the end of RAAM, your muscles can only give so much. And it might be true that if you did 300 or 200 watts for the first day, it doesn't matter what day 8 looks like for your legs.
day
I don't
8
know.
is, in every case, day 8 will be terrible. Day 8 will be difficult, even if you started out very
Yeah.
slow. And you will also get tired
However,
of your head.
if you
Even
take 36
times.
hours off in Colorado, if you take 36 hours off in Colorado, I think you feel much better at the end. That is one benefit. I don't think you don't know what that quite is like, but I think that was one reason why I had a better time than most people do, as far as like being able to enjoy. Um, you know, I passed a lot of racers in the middle of the country, and I tried to encourage them. I was a little bit bummed at how hard of a time so many people were having. Of course, everyone knows it's going to be hard, but really thinking negatively. Because for me, it's just the whole idea of being out there racing RAAM, like actually riding your bike across the country, is almost magical to me. And I know that everyone who is out there doing it solo, it has that power for them too, or else they wouldn't be there. So there were people that were totally stressed about making the Missouri cutoff, or the Mississippi River cutoff. I mean, or just hating the experience. And it's like that was too bad, because if anything, like that's the most important goal for me, was to actually have it be some sort of a meaningful experience. And I know some people, it doesn't work out that way for them. So in any case.
Yeah, it's very, the spirit of our sport is really exciting, and also the camaraderie along the road. I really like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, like you, it's
Yep.
really fascinating. And I think in your situation, because you are very strong in your fitness level, and you had that problems with your health, then you had to stop for 1.5 day. So you have been in a much better condition on the second half of the race than a lot of other
Yeah.
racers.
Oh yeah.
So I think you could enjoy it a little bit more than some of the others.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, I was expecting it to be much worse. The only suffering for me at the end of RAAM was the fact that it was raining. And I think for pretty much everyone, when it turns out that your end of race is rainy, then it's just puts a wet blanket on it. Because I was worried about my safety the last night, and when I was in Ohio, they're like, oh yeah, it's probably going to be raining for most of the rest of the ride. And that just really kind of was disheartening. And I mean, it was
Yeah.
raining when I finished even. It was like, come on, like,
The pictures from you and on the finish line, you always have that rain jacket on.
yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah. And we wasted time on doing stuff. Like, I don't know how much you ride in the rain normally for training. You probably have your setup totally dialed. But we tried stuff like the plastic bags and tried it. My feet were getting wet, and I really should have just given up long before. And we wasted like an hour and a half trying to get me like to stay dry. And there's no solution. If it's raining all day, like you're gonna get wet. But
yeah,
anyways,
for in my case, it's in the training. A lot of years ago, I was training outdoors every day, and I was doing it in every weather, when it was hot, when it was cold, when it was raining. Didn't matter. I was riding outside every time. But now I really enjoy the comfort of my home trainer in the winter, and also
yeah.
in the summertime when it's raining hard, because I do not like cleaning my bike. I do not like washing my
Yeah.
clothes. I do not like the rain. And
Yeah.
for the progress of training, it doesn't make
Mhm.
any difference if you do it outside or inside.
Is
So
it? I'd want. Yeah, I'd be curious. So you can get just as good quality of training. I mean, I know that ideally the trainer allows you to control a lot more and get really high quality training, but it's always hard for me, at least, to motivate to actually execute those rides. in the same
Yeah.
way that I can put myself outside.
Of course, but to be honest, the experience definitely is better when you do it outside, when you're in a great landscape.
Oh yeah.
But when you, like in my case, I'm training for 17, 18 years now, and I know all the places here in my environment,
Right.
and
Right.
so it's like riding outside. It's still the same every day, because when you're on a training camp or in a different country, it's really exciting. But doing your home-based training rides every day, and you
You know
have
all the
like
roads.
a few different
Yeah.
routes, but you know all of them, it also gets boring outside. So I prefer the indoor trainer, watching TV, listening to music or something when it's bad weather. And the quality of training, I'm measuring my power output, my watts. I do not have a smart trainer, so I use the shifters from the bar, and I can do everything, all the intervals, all the cadence, high cadence, low cadence, everything. So I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like about the smart trainer is you can actually force it. You can force the watts for your workout, so you don't actually have to manage it like and do it independently. And so that can make you do stuff. And I haven't used this near as much as I'd like to.
Yeah,
You know,
but
if you want to do those intervals.
yeah, a few minutes ago you asked me about riding in the rain in RAAM, and in my last RAAM I did in 2019, it was raining from halfway point to the finish all the way, and it was really terrible. And the fun thing is, it was really frustrating in the first day. It was, yeah, I was really in a very bad mud, and I didn't smile, I didn't laugh, I was just like frustrated all the time. But then, because I was thinking I want to do RAAM in 8 days and I want to do it as fast as possible, and I made some pressure for myself. But then when I could accept that the weather forecast is very, very bad, and it will keep on raining until the finish of the race, and then from one moment to the other, it was easier for me, because I didn't fight anymore to be as fast as possible. I mean, of course, I rode fast, but I didn't care about the time anymore. I just took it easy. I was thinking to myself, okay, when it's raining, you cannot be under 8 days. It's impossible. So let's just make the best out of it and have some fun and enjoy the race. And it was really one of my most emotional finishes. And I was really happy and lucky when I reached Annapolis. And like in the year before, I did it in 8 days and 1 hour. And I was in the first moments.
So, you felt, you felt
Yeah,
disappointed.
in the first moments, I was disappointed because it was just that one single hour. I didn't make it for 1 hour, and it wasn't. It took me a few hours, or maybe one night of sleep to be happy on the next day and relax and enjoy. But the first emotion was not so good. That's so. Riding
So
in the
19
rain.
was emotional. So was it because of how difficult that was? Like, why was it so emotional?
Yes, because it was so difficult, and it also was like, yeah, 6 win was very special. It was like the long time record of Fury Robic was 5 wins, and I was just
right. So you had been tied until that race. Okay.
Yeah, and I was thinking of my whole lifetime experience as a cyclist. You think back, you started when you were like 20 years old, and you had big dreams, and you wanted to RAAM one day, and then you had the first win, and then there was the record with under 8 days, which was on a shorter route than it was now. So I think on the actual route, it's not possible to do it in 7 days and 15 hours. Yeah, and then all the experiences with your crew, and all the crew became so great friends, and you meet different other riders and so many great people, and then you can win the race for 6 times. It's just incredible, and that was really emotional. And also I knew that I will not do it in the next year, so it was like I don't think it was my last RAAM I ever did, but I knew that in the next years to come, I will not do it. So it was like the perfect.
So it kind of closed that chapter for you in a sense. You closed, you got your 6th win, and then you're able to like experience the whole like entirety of that.
Yeah, it's not.
That's great.
The chapter is not closed forever, but at least for
right. There could be another chapter. This is
yeah.
And so, I mean, and to a much lesser degree, that, you know, I think I experienced some of that. Obviously, not winning or winning 6 times, but the completion of that RAAM really does bring. You know, you have those life flashing before your eyes moments, but it does bring into perspective like everything that you had been journeying for, everything that you've been working towards. And that's
true.
back to those importance of those goals. It's like one thing that, you know, you learn just in the way people operate is you always have to have a goal to work for. And so that's the challenge after RAAM. But when you are completing that goal, it's such a meaningful, I mean, at least for me, it was just massively emotional. And it really does make you think of every little step that you took that got you there. And none of those steps was a misstep enough to prevent you from achieving that. Rolling down those last miles in Maryland, it's such a, even though it was pouring rain, it was a very special experience.
Yeah, did it have an impact on your future life, like on your like self-consciousness or
Well, you know,
mental health, or on your sleeping habits, on your routine or anything, or did life just go on as before?
Well, there's several things that it did do. My wife, Annabelle, I actually married her a few months after finishing RAAM, and she was on my crew. And in fact, she crewed my second 508, the fixed gear one, just a week or two after we started dating. And that actually, it kind of spurred me you know, for us just to finally get, we'd been together for 5 or 6 years at that time, right? But you know, that was it was kind of spurred me to, you know, propose, you know, to actually get married. So I think that was kind of like, okay, you know, she sticks through this crazy RAAM thing, you know, all that stuff. So that was kind of like, all right, just get it done.
Be the perfect woman.
Yeah, this is she's a keeper, right? You know, and I think after that, I did fall into that kind of what next, you know, motivational kind of gap. And my job is incredibly stressful, or it was very stressful to me at the time, and very high intensity and very demanding. And so I kind of got, you know, into that, and we got a house, and, you know, I was buried in my job, and so then I kind of fell away from the cycling discipline. You know, I mean, I still rode, but I think my energy wasn't there. And, you know, I did struggle with, I guess you would say, mental health issues after that. And I think actually I think a lot of people go into ultra cycling, you know, because of something they feel like they're missing, or because of various issues, because it gives you that kind of a framework, and it allows you to have some kind of a powerful goal when things might not make sense, or you feel like you're missing something. And I tried to remind myself, and in some of the, you know, materials and some of the videos that we've made, that's the one thing that I would want people to take away from it. And it sounds kind of cheesy, but, you know, you can do amazing things if you just work towards it, right? And then I constantly tried to remind myself, hey, you did RAAM, like, you can do that. This is no big deal. This is just this little thing. It's not so simple, though. You know, you have that passion for one thing, and you can do that one goal, and it doesn't make anything else any easier. I mean, maybe so yeah. I don't know. I don't know how much it helped those struggles. Maybe it did. A little bit, but it's not like, oh, okay, I'd want to hear your thoughts on this too. Oh yeah, I did RAAM now that there's not a difficulty in the world, you know, like anything can be done.
Yeah, I think
only was so easy, right?
Yeah, my thoughts are quite similar, because some people think that people who did RAAM, like they are superhumans and they are motivated in
Right.
everything they do, or they can achieve everything they want to do. That's
Right.
not true, because we are just ordinary people like everybody else, but we have that special passion for that special thing. And if you have such a big passion for something and you enjoy like riding your bike so much as we do, then you can achieve extraordinary things on your bike.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that you can achieve extraordinary things everywhere in
Yeah.
life, because I have a lot of things I do not like to do, and where I have no motivation, and I'm not sure why I should do it, and what is the sense about doing something. But in cycling, everything makes sense, and everything is. I love it. I also love the tough
Yeah.
training and the tough situations in RAAM, when you know you have your crew helping you through these tough situations. Yeah, and where your passion is, there you can do that great things. But so
Yeah. And
I
I
think
think,
it's
yeah, it's about finding that passion,
yes,
you
and
know,
for
and
many
finding
people
that talent.
it's
Yeah.
difficult to find the thing they really like to do. A lot of people do never find it in their whole lifetime, and some other people
Yeah.
find it quite early. And I was lucky that I found my passion for cycling quite early in life, and I'm not sure if it will last forever, but until now it does. And I hope the future, maybe there comes one day when the passion is gone and I need to do something else. Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah. So has your passion and interest for ultra cycling, has it continued, like as a steady state or even increasing? Because I mean, for me, and I think this is probably because, you know, I have a career outside of cycling. You know, I have other things in my life. It's very cyclical. You know, it went way down after RAAM, and I think that's common. But you know, it never reached that peak again. And I'm trying to find it, because once I get out, it's the same old thing. You know, I love riding, but it's not something that I've been able to maintain. But like you said, you've been riding for so many years, with consistently, you know, world-class performances. Like how does that motivation work for you? Like do you go through these ups and downs?
Yes, of course, I have ups and downs, and especially after having a successful year, I have to look for new goals in the future who make sense to me.
Right.
And but there is one big difference, because I was making a living out from cycling, so I have all
Yeah.
those things around it. I also have a lot of other things to do, like we have an online shop, we are selling cycling stuff, and I do online, sorry, not online, but keynote speeches. Some of them are online at the moment, but
Right.
doing lectures and trying to talk to people and give them inspiration and motivation is a lot of things to do. And I also want to improve in that other like jobs. But everything in my life is related to cycling, but it's not only cycling. So I think because all the relations from cycling and all the other things I do in my life, it's like a good package to keep me motivated. And
So
when you
since
see
yeah,
that, yeah, the sponsors are happy with you and your performance,
it's reinforcing. Yeah.
yes, it's and a lot of
So
people are really happy when they listen to a speech or a presentation, and afterwards they say, "Hey, thank you, you gave me inspiration. Now I have found my goal, what I want to do in the future for
yeah.
myself," and that's really cool, even for me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So do you? I think the challenge, or maybe I've seen turning it into a career, which I think is very difficult in something like ultra cycling. Um, does it risk turning into uh, lowering that passion? You know, since it's not something you're just doing out of the love of it, you're actually having to do all the nitty gritty business
Yes.
stuff. Does
Yes.
that ever take away? I mean, or are you able to separate the joy of writing from you know, the day-to-day work that it is to make a living out of it?
Yeah, it's difficult, and it's from time to time it changes. In the last month, there was less work to do around cycling, so I could focus more on training, and I enjoyed training more because of the lockdown stuff and everything. I had more time to just train and relax. And that was a moment when I found out that just riding the bike is really the best thing, and all the work around it's necessary to make a living
Yeah.
from it, but it's not really the big fun. But yeah, I can manage, and in my case, my partner, my girlfriend Sabine is also involved in our like 2-person company. So I know that what I do and what I was building up in the last years with our shop and all that stuff around it is like we 2 people can make a living out of it. So it's not only for myself, it's also for the 2 of us, and that's really increasing that that level of fun, and that I like to do what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, that's rare to be able to
And
chase that passion and have it support you.
yeah, and I was always thinking that most of us have the dream of being very successful and making a career and doing it professional, but then I understood that a lot of us just like it as a hobby because there is not so much pressure then. And when it's just a
Yeah.
hobby and your ordinary life is not in trouble when you are like DNF or you cannot do a good race or a bad result or something, it's much easier to keep relaxed, because when
Yeah.
everything is depending on you being successful, it's quite tricky sometimes.
Yeah. So for me, as a hobby, I mean, it's a very it's an important outlet outside of work, as kind of a stress relief as one, and also something to have a goal that's not just focused only on work. And the downside to that is not being able to structure my time around training and being as healthy as I can and doing everything I need to get a race in line. I mean, that's okay. It's something like RAAM for 500-mile races. That's no problem at all. For something like RAAM, I mean, it's very difficult. It really should be almost like a full-time job between the training and the logistics to do RAAM. So I kind of saw it as having like 2 full-time jobs. And so it was something that I was proud of, that I could make that work, because it's and I don't actually know what the stats, probably because there's a lot of actually maybe retired people doing RAAM. Maybe 50%, or would you say more, have like normal full-time jobs, RAAM solos? I don't actually know.
I think so, yeah. I'm not sure, but I
Yeah,
think so.
at least half, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's another challenge. But I don't think I would want to do. We did a little bit of the sponsorship stuff and had some good relationships there, but it really is a lot of work. And then I didn't really like feeling beholden to having to make sure that they get their product or money's worth. It was a stressor, right? And so I certainly would want those kind of things in the future, but it's really it's really something that if you can actually support yourself outside somehow and are fortunate enough to be able to afford all these expenses. I thought you and Franz had a good discussion on that. Right.
Yeah,
Just
true.
kind of the challenge of the small, and in our industry, there's just really not that much money or support. I mean, it's just it's dry out there, and a lot of bike companies don't have much extra funds, and so you're looking for other companies. And in the US, people don't care nearly as much about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm so happy that that sport is very popular here in Austria. It's really really cool, yeah. And maybe that's the reason why I entered it, because otherwise I would never have known that there is such a race like Furnace Creek or RAAM or all that crazy.
Right. Well, you and Franz both followed Wolfgang Fasching, right? Like as kind of an entry into being interested in ultra cycling.
True. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And also Jure Robic from Slovenia and all that very successful riders have been from that area, from Central Europe. It's like a big bubble of ultra cycling. Also, India is on the rise. A lot of Indians are doing it. A lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, I think that's
from
great.
Denmark. So let's see what the future brings.
Yeah.
But one thing we wanted to talk about, and then I think we should like make it to our finish line because the interview is
Yes.
already
Yes. This
quite
doesn't
long.
need to be an endurance event to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah. How can some riders do so many races and other do
Yeah.
like only a few races but on a higher level?
Yes.
I think you never had that interest in doing a lot of races, did you?
I think when I first started, riding, it was like all double centuries, which is those are pretty taxing as you travel. I mean, I did one like sometimes successive weekends. When I started the 500s, it was like a huge thing. The first one. The next year, I did ones back to back, like the Hoodoo and the 508, which some people thought was a lot, but then nothing else during the rest of the year. These things are taxing. I like to prepare a lot for them. I don't have the desire to do it all the time because it's enough for me to say, okay, I'm planning on that for this year. And so I prefer to train or go on really long rides. I can go on plenty of very long rides. The race is something different.
One of our, I would say, legends of the sport is Valerio Zamboni.
Yes.
And he does so many races, even
like almost every race, right? Yeah, he just enters a race.
But his age is not our age. He's a little bit, he has a little bit more years. But he's like a phenomenon. He's doing every race, every few weeks, he's doing a very long race. And it's like an extreme example of doing as many races as possible. And I think I'm in the middle. I'm doing like race across America and race around Austria maybe in 1 year, and maybe a third one,
and then could be record like attempts,
24 hours or something.
Yeah,
but this is maximum 3 events in a year on a high level. That's, for me, it's possible, but I couldn't do like 4, 5, 6 events in 1 year. That I could finish it, but not on a good level. And other people, they just pick one race, prepare for 1 or 2 years just to have their peak performance in that one race. And it's like everything is possible. It's depending on what you prefer and what your goal is.
Yeah. And I think especially if you're also juggling the job, I mean, it's just not realistic to be able to do more than, say, a RAAM. I mean, that's already like pushing it. But yeah, I'll start with just one. We'll see about for this year. I hope that the races that I want to do are still going to be held. I was actually toying with doing some of the 24 hours that were held January, February, and all of them are canceled at this point. So we'll see what this year holds.
Yeah, it will be a special year, of course. But I think summertime and maybe autumn and the second half of the year, I'm very positive that races will
turn
happen.
Around.
Yep. So having a look into the future, let's do the last questions of our session today.
Okay.
Are you going to ride tomorrow? Or maybe today in the afternoon?
I'm gonna ride today. I'm making a commitment here. It's too easy to put it off. It's a work day, and in fact, I have to jump to work right now. But yeah, I'm gonna ride today. I'm actually gonna use the indoor trainer probably because I won't get to ride till it starts. But
perfect. What about your bicycle maintenance? How would you rate yourself from 1 to 10? Are you a great mechanic or just a poor one like so many other riders?
I put a huge amount of effort into doing various things, tinkering with my bikes. Now, I'm not the best mechanic, but I try to do everything. And I think my setups on RAAM, for instance, and pretty much for all my racing are I build them from frames generally, and it saves a lot of money, but it also like I'm constantly tinkering with things. But that also has a challenge of really wasting training time. Like I might be a couple hours late to get out riding because the crank is, I'm fiddling with getting a bottom bracket creak out or something, or building up a wheel because, I broke a spoke because I didn't tension it properly or something. But I do take, I do enjoy doing that work myself, and getting to know the bike and building the bike and changing the components and getting something that works well. I'm an engineer at work, and I think that I do enjoy this kind of just kind of manual
I think
work.
this is the key. If you like,
Yeah.
if you enjoy that work, then of course you will be a good mechanic. But so you will be more 10, maybe 8, 9, or 10 or something.
But a 10 would imply that I'm really good at it, and I probably am not. I get made fun of for having things break, and I think I'm just hard on components also. But yeah, I definitely put in a 9 or 10 effort wise, at least.
That's good. I think that's one of the best rankings of all our guests until today. And is there anybody you want to nominate for a future episode? Who should be one of our guests?
Oh
in the
man,
upcoming episodes.
There's a lot of people that come to mind. Most recent RAM. Oh no, I guess all of these guys are doing RAM a lot. Michael Conti is a great guy who has a great story. I don't know if you're familiar with his story from RAAM 2016 and 18, but
I just know that he had a great race and a great finish and a great result. And I was like not knowing him before the race, but then he was on the podium, I think. And
but that was after coming back from his crew car being piled into by a semi in 2016. Then he came back in 2018 and did well.
We will reach out for him and invite him. It's a very good thing. Thank you.
So he was he's crewed several of my races, and he's been a part of the experience and done very well, both winning RAW the year after I did, I think, and then having the RAAM experience. So
okay. Thank you very much for taking your time. Thank you for being here with us. And I wish you just a great day for your job today and for riding in the afternoon, and that you keep your spirits high and keep motivated for future races.
Yep.
And I hope to see you again, maybe in Borrego Springs on the glass elevator or maybe anywhere else on the road.
Race across Austria, race around Austria, right? Maybe there.
You have to do it. It's beautiful. You have
I might need some help.
Landscapes, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
No. Very good. Well, it was great chatting with you, Christoph.
Yeah, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you like it as well. Until next episode, keep spinning ultra.